On the show today, we have a very special guest. Now, we have a program in our Rainmaker world called Inner Circle. This is like our highest tier program with our top level students who are crushing it on Amazon, wanting to go to the next level. These are all amazing entrepreneurs. And when they came into this program, we wanted to really do something special at the very beginning. And so we brought in an expert on the topic of money mindset, and getting rid of any limiting beliefs that may be holding you back from crushing it financially in your life. All right. And so on this show, we are going to do some takeaways from those sessions. So we have Melissa with us. She did over 30 sessions with our Inner Circle members. And I just wanted to have her on the show. Chelsea and I were like, we want to come on the show and hear how those sessions went. What were some of the breakthroughs? What even is this whole idea of money blocks or things that could be holding me back in my mindset around money? And let's talk about this so we can all level up together. So if you guys are okay with that, we would love to bring you some of this higher level training on this podcast. It is about the topic of mindset, which I know some people are like, oh, mindset, I don't need this. But the more we've dug into this, even with our highest level entrepreneurs, we find that this is one of the key things you need to do on your journey of being an entrepreneur. So welcome, Melissa, to the Rainmaker Family Show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you both.
Now, this isn't the first time Melissa has been on the show. If you guys want to listen to episode 13, it's an amazing episode, again, on overcoming adversity in your life. The show episode title, I love the title of the show, is This Can Crush You or This Can Catapult You. And Melissa tells her story, her backstory. So we won't go into that today. If you want to dive more into that, go listen to episode 13. It is such a powerful episode, one of my favorite episodes. But today we're all going to talk about money mindset. And I feel like Chelsea and I have really leveled up in this mindset, but there's always new areas of growth to, I feel like, go and kind of like look at. Some of these things are things from childhood. Some of these things are things from even like, our parents or how we were raised. But I feel like the biggest indicator of this that we've seen, and Melissa, I don't know if you've seen this, is actually just getting around other people. We're in a lot of entrepreneurial groups and masterminds, but sometimes you just get around, other people that aren't as entrepreneurial, and you just hear the way they're talking about money. And it rubs you the wrong way, right? And it's kind of an indicator that like, whoa, I've actually grown in this area and I don't use language like that anymore. Or I don't, believe that same thing about money. And sometimes it's like getting around other people, not to say like, oh, we are better than them or anything like that, right? It's just like there's different perspectives on this topic. And I think we've noticed it most around other people where it's like, oh my gosh, we totally used to talk just like that. We used to say things just like, we used to believe things just like that. And now we're just like so opposite, right? And so I don't know, Melissa, how have you seen this in your own life? Where did this first start coming out, this idea of money mindset, overcoming limiting beliefs around money? Do you have a personal story around this that you could share?
Yeah. So yeah, that's so true though. I agree with what you just said. Same. And I think it goes both ways too, because also then being around, when I first got around you and Chelsea and other higher level entrepreneurs, it helped break some of that. It helped because I felt some of the, I wasn't thinking that big. I wasn't, so it really goes both ways. And that's one of the things I love about the Rainmaker community is because that keeps pulling you, when you're in community, when you're by yourself, it can get lonely and your mindset even can get really challenged into a place. But for me, this is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it, because I would say I grew up mostly like really a lot of people grow up with somewhat of a scarcity mindset. I think especially if you grew up in the United States, a lot of people grew up with scarcity, sort of this lack, sort of this, there's one pie and we're all sharing it. And so if Stephen and Chelsea get a bigger chunk, then that means that I'm going to get less, and, a lot of hopelessness and things like that. So I grew up like that. And then when I got into doing community development and missions work, I developed a major poverty mindset, which I just wasn't expecting that, but I got onto the field. There was a lot of poverty around me, a lot of lack. And I felt almost like I got swallowed up in it. I just really got into a poverty mindset where I felt like, okay, this work that we're doing, because we were doing work out, mission work where normally you would get donations or, either the church or other people would support you. And I kind of got locked into that. When I first left for the mission field, I did have a business and I thought, this is awesome. The business is going to like support us and support the work that we want to do. But we got really challenged by other missionaries on the field with lots of experience. I had a lot of self-doubt, and we can talk a little bit about that, because that's definitely a block. It's a mindset block. It's a limiting belief. But I had a lot of self-confidence, not necessarily in business, but definitely in the area of ministry and community development. It's just things I hadn't done before. And so I got challenged that, hey, the way you're supposed to do this is, trust God and wait for those donations to come in. And so because I began to doubt if I even knew what I was talking about, or, I was a brand new missionary, so I wanted to do it the best way. So I decided, okay, well, I want to trust God 100%. So I'm just going to do it this way as well. And not that that's a bad way, but it wasn't the way for us. And so we really struggled for a long time, not only to have enough to do the ministry and the community development work we wanted, but even for our family. We just really got to a place where we just couldn't see opportunity. We just got locked into like, there's no money. It's not coming in the way we're expecting it to come in. And so it's almost like it blinded us. That's what was one of my biggest takeaways from kind of maybe not growing up with a poverty mindset, but stepping into it for a season of my life, is just the opportunity, block that you get. You just can't really see anything. And so it was really a time where we started thinking, well, we're either going to stop doing this kind of nonprofit work, or we need a different strategy. And, for us, that's when we prayed. We prayed like, oh God, what do we do? And that's when we just looked at, and I think I shared a little bit, I won't go too much into this, because I think it was in the other podcast that we did together as well, but just really having to look outside and start to look at like multiplication all around us. And now that's one of the biggest thing I say, like, scarcity is invented. Like, the idea that there's not enough is an invented concept that we have come up with. If you go outside, like, you can even see I'm in Minnesota right now. We have a short summer, but you can see all the green and the plants just multiplying themselves. And when I was going through this time of just a real shift in my mindset around finances, around opportunities, I really looked at nature and where you look. I mean, if you look at the blades of grass, there's an abundance. If you look at leaves, if you look at sand, if you look at the ocean, you can be reminded, wait, there is abundance everywhere. So then the question began, then how do we tap into that? If that's real, and scarcity is not real, it feels really real. And I know what that feels like. Scarcity feels real. It feels like that last bit of money, if it goes away, it maybe is never going to come back. But those were things that we had to let go of and shift to be able to begin to see the opportunities. So once we stepped out of that idea that, okay, well, this is the only way our finances can come in, maybe there's more. And that was, leaving some of the comforts of what we knew and sort of stepping out and venturing out. And that's when we really started to see, wow, no, there's so much opportunity. There's so much more for us. And we just had such a shift in our mindset. It just went from feeling helpless and like we had to wait for other people to help us, to really feeling empowered to be able to say, no, there's enough in us. We're all built with gifts and inside of us and talents. How do we tap into that to maximize, just to maximize, even like I call it a brain hack. How do we hack our brain then to go along and support our vision, support our dreams, support our financial goals? That's kind of what I feel like money mindset goes down to. It's like you have to sort of rewrite the story, because you said when, some of it's from when we were kids, and we start formulating our thoughts around money at 3 years old. So of course we're not like as a 3-year-old saying, hey, this is what I think about money. But we're watching our parents, we're watching our family. What do they say? Do they get mad about money? Do they get frustrated around money? I realized for myself, when I was a kid, my mom would pay the bills and she would get really frustrated when she would have to sit down and pay the bills. Like, you didn't want to even go near the table. It was like, she was just, it was, and so I built up this idea that like paying the bills is like a very frustrating, subconsciously, of course, frustrating, bad experience. And so I realized later in life, I repeated the same thing. It came to paying bills, and whether there was money there or there wasn't money there, I felt frustrated because it was a learned behavior that I had, just gathered and formulated in my mind that this is what you do when you pay bills. And so I had to rewrite that story. I had to hack my brain and be like, no, like I don't need to feel stressed out and frustrated and angry. Those aren't just normal, hey, this is what you have to feel when you talk about money. That's a lie.
Yeah.
It's totally huge. I was talking with a friend recently who is very entrepreneurial, and we were just talking about business. And I said, business and entrepreneurship, it always comes back to mindset, and at different levels, it's that still that working out that mindset that you have. And Melissa, I would love for you to just kind of explain, maybe to a stranger who's never heard of like money blocks, how would you describe what a money block is, and why is it important to overcome money blocks?
Awesome. Yeah. So I'll share with you sort of the 4 most common money blocks. And this will really help as you're just thinking about your own life. And these are limiting beliefs. So they aren't just going to block your money. They're going to block you from even, dreaming bigger or, going for that new business or that new job or that vacation you've always wanted with your family, but it completely affects your finances. And those 4 things, the first one is fear. Fear is a huge money block. The second one is self-doubt. Self-doubt is a money block. Lack of focus. And I will say lack of focus is sort of someone told me one time, like, Melissa, do you think you have a lack of focus? And I was like, what? No, I'm super focused, but I had too much on my plate. So I couldn't focus the way I needed to be able to focus to make it actually function and become profitable. I'm a multi-passionate. It was too much. So as much as I couldn't and I didn't want to identify with the fact that I had a lack of focus, the truth is I had too many things to be able to focus on one thing or, 1 or 2 things and make it successful. So our brain is going to automatically want to protect us from doing anything that could be scary, that could, have risk. That's our brain's way of protecting us from, like, back in the day, when we had to like run from, dangerous animals and things like that. But, I actually have to practice this out loud sometimes. This might sound crazy for some people, but it works for me and it might work for someone listening. I have to actually tell my brain when my brain wants to go back into automatic protect fear mode. I have to be like, all right, brain, thank you. I know you're trying to protect me, but I'm okay. Like, it's okay. I like have to tell myself it's okay sometimes, when that fear wallows up inside of you of like, you're going to hit the send button to buy, your 4th quarter inventory for Amazon. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is the biggest investment I've ever made. And all of a sudden your mind is flooded with fear and what ifs, and and it's okay to just be like, okay, you know what, brain, thank you for sending the indicators, to help me like stay safe, but this is okay. I'm doing my best and I've ran the numbers and I'm going to hit yes, it's okay to make this step. And it's really helpful because we're retraining our brains to not just go back into operation fear, because it will, I mean, that at the end of the day, like, why don't we take action? It's not because we don't want to have positive results. We're just afraid it might not be positive.
I love that you just gave a practical thing that you do when you feel fear and you have to literally talk out loud to your brain and tell your brain it's going to be okay. And we know that that's so powerful, that self-talk, even if it's that inner dialogue. I would love to hear some more of your practical things that maybe you do on a daily basis as you're working through mindsets or that you've done in the past and have overcome, or give to some of your clients, your business owners that you're working with strategically. Like, here are some takeaways
The brain
you can do.
hacks.
The
You
brain
mentioned
hacks.
those. I'm like, I want the brain hack.
Yes, yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely, right? So I think that a huge one is in our language, right? Like we it's the I have to versus the I get to. That's been a big one for me lately in the way we think. If we're, again, it's hacking our brain into thinking it's not just about like, oh, positive thinking and everything's going to be fine. No, these are hacks to get ourselves into action. Because if I'm thinking, oh, tomorrow I have to take this action on my business, and it's not my favorite thing to do, but I have to do it. I'm really just I'm creating more difficulty for myself than if I were to just pivot. And this is so easy, but you have to be intentional with it. Just going into, instead of I have to, I get to, and I know that might sound wait, I get to, respond to 25 emails, but how do you find the positive in that? Like, I get to share breakthrough information. I get to invest in my business. I get to say yes to my dream. I get to, there are all these little things that we can do. And then it literally works though. Like, first off, you actually will feel different in your body even if you just switch whatever you're doing, whatever you're like not looking forward to. If you just take a moment and try to find like, well, what could be the gold in that? What could be the upgrade in that? What could be the great thing that could come out of me doing that action? And then focus on that instead of the negative, you'll actually feel a difference in your body. Like, your body will feel different. And that's the big thing about the mindset stuff, is stuff like, some people think it's completely separate from business, but it is, your everyday decisions, your mind has to believe it's possible before you're going to start to take action on it. So if we can, again, just hack it into going all in with us and becoming a positive partner in our day-to-day decisions, like, that's been a huge one. So how can I, that's a huge Rainmaker one. That's a huge, like, I can't, to how can I have to I get to. Even just taking time. I know for some people, the automatic response, there's a lot of anxiousness around money. You might be about to, make a big decision in your business. There are decisions that you haven't made before. You don't know, you've never been there. And they say the very first thing, this is one of my favorite hacks. The very first thing to change in you physically, when you go from like a state of just a peaceful state, let's just say you're having your day, it's just going fine, you're drinking your coffee in the morning, it's great. And then all of a sudden your mind starts going and you're like, oh my God, I got to pay this. I have to do this. I have to, again, the language, I have to, and this and this. And all of a sudden, the very first thing you'll notice that changes is your breath. You will begin to breathe faster, and so sometimes just stopping when those anxious thoughts start coming up in your mind around money, around what you have to do, is just stopping and breathing. Like they say, actually doing this, taking 6 deep breaths in and 6 deep breaths out. I'm not exactly sure why the magic number is 6, but it's 6. You don't have to do more than that. But you can do less, of course. Maybe you start with 6 and you realize, well, I only need to take 2 deep breaths in. You're just sort of taking back that control of your mind so that your mind isn't kind of on squirrel and just going like to this thought, to that thought, to this thought. Cause that can happen. For some people, it happens right away in the morning after that caffeine kicks in. For some people, it's at night. You're laying down and you're wanting to rest. And all of a sudden your mind just starts inventing the worst case scenarios on repeat, and you're like, why am I? Yeah, right. And sometimes like it's a like, I've had to get up out of bed and just be like, okay, I'm tired. I'm not going to think like this. Like there's as many bad, scenarios I can create, there's that many good scenarios. And the true story is most worst case scenarios never play out. There's a very like high percentage of the amount of thoughts that we have that never happen. It is like very high. I want to say like 70% of our thoughts, these worst case scenario thoughts that we are taking time to think about and let it get us all worked up, they're never going to happen. They're never going to happen. So we just need to learn to sort of take that deep breath and breathe through it. Sometimes it'll change your whole, just the way you physically feel by just taking in six deep breaths, switching and saying, okay, I'm not gonna let this fear or my self-doubt, take me over. I'm gonna breathe and try to pull it back. It's really helpful. It works a lot of the time for me.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's so good.
Thank you for sharing those helpful tips. My mind definitely tends to race at night. And I think reading before I go to bed helps that for sure. And just taking deep breaths. But I am one to, my mind is racing at night and then I wake up all peaceful. So I can definitely work on this. But Melissa, you touched on one thing that grabbed my attention from the beginning. And you said that at the age of 3 years old, you start, creating mindsets around money. And of course, as parents and so many mamas that are listening to this, we want to create healthy conversation topics and healthy mindsets about money. Are there any things in particular that you and your family are doing, or maybe when you made that shift, especially in coaching people about money blocks and all those that you do with your kiddos? And I know you have kids of all different ages that you're around. I would love to hear some of those that you can share with our audience.
Yeah, totally. One has been huge in the language and changing the language to being positive around money. Letting my kids know too that there's not a lack. That idea, like we were talking in the beginning, of scarcity, in that, there's only so much money, there's really like showing we've gone from, because my older kids, I have a 20-year-old and a 19-year-old that they've lived a lot of the other type of mentality. And this is the great thing, guys. No matter what you've lived up until now, we can change the story. So we've had to change the story. Our kids were like, wait, we were like in major poverty mindset, mom. And then being able to like use that and go, that we realized like that wasn't, we don't want to live like that. We want to live with an abundant mentality, not just about finances, of course, about finances, but of an abundant mentality about all things, right? There's an abundance of joy. There's abundance of peace. These are all tied to our money mindset, because if we really know and tap into those truths that, there's an abundance of peace. There's an abundance of a peaceful lifestyle. Like it doesn't have to be, I work really hard, like that old school kind of, my dad has been a business owner, and it's that old school, like first one in, last one out. I got to work the hardest because I'm the owner and I gotta, hustle. Yeah. So, just breaking those things off, for our older ones. And then, we have the youngest is a 4 and a 6-year-old, and then a bunch of ages in between. We won't get into all that. There's 7 altogether. We've got a lot of work to do, but it's a lot of fun then, because you shift your mind from thinking, so now they're seeing us. Then, so how do we talk about money? My husband and I both had to be conscious about how we were talking about money, and not just like reverting back to like old money sayings, like, oh, it's just never enough, or, oh, it's just, oh, I wish it could be like that, almost to a way of making it sound like it's not really possible. And so just really changing and upgrading your language and like into that abundant mentality that all things are possible, even for them, like, what do they want to do, versus us having like this set idea of what we really want them to do, like what are their giftings? What are they great at? What do they love? And how can they, especially for the older two, then how do they, do they have to go to college? That's a big topic. A lot of parents are like, oh, I don't want to, don't talk about that. Of course they have to go to college. but we got to the point of like, because we're rewriting our stories, you know, keeping that in mind, moms, we're rewriting our money stories, and we get to do that. We get to rewrite the narrative. It doesn't have to be the same. So we can say to our kids, I know for me, it felt like an absolute. I had to go to college, but my husband and I looked at each other and were like, well, is it still a need? And so we just talked to our kids, and just changed the way that we spoke around money, especially. That's been huge for our kids, and just knowing there's more than enough. I've even brought my kids online, like, where they're selling like those outrageous things. Like I saw this like concrete door stopper thing, and it was like $3,000, and it was like, and people are buying it. And it's like, you see, there's no lack. There's no lack. There's people buying ripped up, nylons for, $800. Like there's no lack. We just have to tap into it. We just have to, I saw something recently that was like a meme, and it had the parent and it said the influencer, and then it had the kid behind them and it said follower. And I thought that was so great, especially for us entrepreneurs, and people on social media. Like that's the truth for, as parents, we are the influencers. So how are we speaking? What story are we sharing with them? What truths are we sharing with them? And how are we helping them see things and shift the way they think about the world? Because when you do watch the news and you watch a lot of movies and a lot of things culturally, you tend to see it, just that scarcity mindset is very heavy, especially on the news. Like, I think some people, a great hack would be maybe not to watch the news, especially before you go to bed. Not that you want to be like unaware of what's happening in the world, but there's a lot of fear-based news. And we want to, like, I tell a lot of people talk about savings, as like, there's a fear-based savings method, and then there's a wisdom-based savings method. And we always want to, guys, if we're saving, we don't want to save, for example, out of a scarcity lack mindset. Like we're saving because we don't know when the floor could fall out and we could lose it all. So we gotta have that in there. I mean, that message to our children and to ourselves says, that's lack. We're operating out of lack, then we're operating out of fear. And so, but it is good to save. It's good to save, and it's great to multiply. But when some people have an untouchable savings that even if they knew they could multiply it, they're too afraid to touch it because of fear, like even though they could take that money and then multiply it and then put the money back, it's this idea. And so we want to use wisdom always. If we're saving, we want to be saving not out of fear, but out of wisdom. How, just letting wisdom guide us versus fear guide us. And so watching the news, sometimes that can make it hard, especially lately with all the talk about inflation and everything. I was reading something recently, and this was a huge mindset, like, I guess unblock for me. Is it said the most millionaires ever to come out of the United States came out of the Great Depression. And I was like, what? Wow, that's so, like, that helps take away some of the fear of like the what ifs. There was like entrepreneurs who pivoted in that time of the Great Depression, the Great Depression has a huge mark on our money mindset. We talk a lot about that in sessions with people. A lot of people came from that, the Great Depression, or had a grandma or a parent who really was influenced by the Great Depression. But there was a ton of millionaires made in the Great Depression, and we don't tend to focus on that. Inflation can become a major, major opportunity for business owners. And so I got excited about that. I was like, okay, you're talking about inflation, and then just talking about the opportunities that inflation can bring for business owners, instead of just looking at it as, oh my gosh, we got to tighten the belt. We got to, get afraid. We can actually build our business during inflation as well.
I've had to like tune out of YouTube a little bit lately too, because it's like every thumbnail is like doom and gloom. And I get it. Like fear and anger are the top two things that get people to click, right? So if your business is getting clicks and views, which is the news, which is YouTube, which is all these places, you're going to use those fear tactics. And luckily not everyone's preaching that, but you got to really protect your mindset. And that's like who you're surrounding yourself with. And if you're not in groups, masterminds, and you're not in a healthy community that has a healthy mindset, your community around this is what you're reading online. It's the books you're reading. It's the people you're around, social media profiles, the YouTube videos you're watching. And so getting around healthy people is another brain hack that's going to level you up. Even just listening to this show, listening to other people that carry this mindset. I mean, I remember like, I think getting around other people, I don't know, Melissa, if you have a moment like this, but getting around other people that just talk openly about money and then like sharing big things that like stretch your mindset, that also is a huge thing. Like and you see this in sports, right? Like it's like one person, does this crazy trick on a skateboard and now like everyone can do it because it's the new standard, right? If you look at like, I watch like snowboarding X Games, right? People are spending more on their snowboard now than like they would ever have dreamed of years ago. But because some 14-year-old did a, 1900, spin off a jump, now it's like the standard, right? And so same thing with money. I remember we were at a conference, we were in the photography world at the time, we were at a photography conference, and one of the speakers was Jenna Kutcher, who at the time was a wedding photographer. And she had just started to do education, and she gave this talk, and it was the first time I heard one of my basically peers at the time, right? Like, we were in our 20s probably. She was like, this was our first $1 million year. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like it just like hearing someone who was like, in the same world as us make $1 million. Like it just was like, that's now possible for me. Cause I just literally heard her say one sentence and then getting around other people like, now who it's like, we have 6-figure days. I've been around people who have had $1 million days. And like, I never thought that was possible until getting around other people. And the more people we surround ourselves that are just saying this is possible and here's how to do it, the more we've leveled up in that. I don't know if you have a story like that where someone said something that really was like, oh my goodness, that's real. And it just like forced you to level up, right?
Yes, absolutely. I like to call it like normalizing wealth. No, we have to normalize it because if we feel like it is like, and that's what this does. When you get around people, it normalizes it. It makes it reachable where otherwise it's so like of another planet. And if we think that, then we don't feel pushed to go for it. But when I hear, for me, you guys were huge in that. Like you guys like, millionaires, going for it. And I remember a specific time, and I love that. I love inside the Rainmaker group, we get those, you hit a milestone and you get something. And I remember I had just started the Amazon business and launched the very first product. I had no idea how it was going to go. And I was hoping, of course, for the best. And I saw Sharon had put like, she had gotten like the, one of the highest awards. And I remember just going, wow, like this makes it possible for me too. And, it's like the chip shifts then, and it's like, this is obtainable. It's obtainable. And you guys, that is huge. When your mind believes it's possible, then you will go for it. If your mind believes it's not possible, it's not that it won't ever happen for you, but it's a lot less likely that it will, and it will be a lot more challenging. So that for sure, I would say, and again, that's why I love community, because community, doing business in community is going to help you see that over and over. When you're all by yourself, it's easy to get locked into your space where it's safe, you're used to navigating in that territory. But when you get around people who are going for it, it will pull you up. It will pull you up to go for more. So yeah, totally.
So true.
Totally.
Awesome. I love that, Melissa. Well, if there is a way for our Rainmaker community to maybe even get in a session with you about money mindset, money blocks, all those things that you are coaching incredible business owners in, what is the best way that people can connect with you or just hear more about what you're doing?
So inside Rainmakers, there's actually a link now where people can go ahead and book a session. And so if you're like, I don't know, should I book a session? I mean, if you're struggling with fear, like around finances, if you're just stressing about it, and, it's just that you can just feel it. It's affecting you in so many different ways. Just fear around money, stress around money, anxiety around money. This is a great session for you, or self-doubt. You're just constantly beating yourself up. I've heard a saying recently that if what is it? If being hard on yourself was a strategy, it would have worked by now. So, if you're just hard on yourself, like, everybody else is awesome and I just not, I just never good enough. And just find yourself in a rut of being hard on yourself, or just if you're like me, multi-passionate, so many awesome, amazing ideas all the time, but you're not sure what to focus on, that can affect your finances. So that's another great reason. And so, or you just have a lot of stuff that you grew up with that's just been hard to kind of let go or detect, because it hangs out in your subconscious, you're just not aware that it's there. So if these are things that kind of resonate with you, then I would love to hop on a call, get you some breakthrough in this area. It's going to not just affect your finances, it's going to affect your day-to-day as well. It's just going to make life more fun. Freedom, truth brings freedom, and freedom is a lot more fun than feeling, caged up in a certain way it has to be and feeling frustrated. So there's a link inside Rainmakers, for those who are in Rainmakers. I don't know how the best way to.
Yeah, if you're in Rainmakers, you can find it on the upgrades page. You'll know what that is. If you're outside Rainmakers, what's the best place for people to connect with you? Like, do you prefer Instagram, Facebook? Okay, Instagram. So we'll put
Instagram.
the Mindset Advisors on Instagram.
Cool.
Awesome. We'll put that link in the chat. Melissa, just to end out this show, do you have a favorite story of a client you've worked with one of these sessions and the breakthrough that they saw that comes to mind?
Yeah. One of my very favorite ones was a client who is, I have a couple, but okay, I'm just gonna go with this one. She's in real estate, a real estate investor, and so she flips houses, buys and sells real estate, and she had about a 10-year lapse where 10 years prior she had bought and purchased something and it just didn't go well. She lost money, and subconsciously she began to blame herself and just have a lot of fear and self-doubt around if she could make the right decision again. And so we discovered with her in a session that there was a lot of just sort of self-sabotaging behavior going on. She would put stuff out there, but she wouldn't take action on it. She just didn't do anything. And then just realizing in one session, hey, just really need to actually shift the way you see yourself. You actually were you went all in, and you were so courageous, and you made this decision. And it's not like she lost everything, but even if she had, here she is today. She's not afraid to make big money decisions. And so we just reframed a little bit how she saw herself. And then here was a big thing. She had to forgive herself. She had to forgive herself for, just for her making that decision that costed her a lot of money. And you guys, it might sound so simple, but that was the unblock that she needed. Within 3 days, she had purchased or put bids on 3 additional properties and has not stopped since. She just needed the clarity to be able to, and that confidence to know, what, actually, you're pretty awesome. I was gonna use a different word, but I don't know how many kids might be listening, so we'll just keep it at that. You're pretty awesome at business and making big boss decisions. And that's the truth of who you really are. And so let's lean into that, and just how you are. You're not afraid to spend big money, and boom, it just clicked for her and her business. And like I said, she's been flipping houses ever since.
Well, so cool. Melissa, thank you for being on the show. Again, we'll put the links in the chat if you're listening to this and you're like, I think it'd be time for me to dig into this a little bit. Mm-hmm. I definitely highly recommend it. We saw so many awesome stories from our Inner Circle members working with Melissa one-on-one. She did sessions with every single person. And man, just people were just going on and just raving about the results that they're having almost instantly from these sessions. So thank you, Melissa, for spending your time doing that for our community. For leaning into this topic. And until then, we'll leave you guys, but take action on this episode. We'll see you on the next episode of the Rainmaker Family Show.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. Hey, if you are not a part of our Rainmaker Mastermind, we have a new opportunity for you to book a one-on-one strategy call with one of our Rainmaker coaches.
If you want to get a call with them, see if it's a good fit for you to work with us to build a business that allows you to have time freedom and financial freedom, you can get that call at makeItRainMama.com/podcast. That's makeItRainMama, MOMMA.com/podcast.